Hello, I'm Kelly Granville from the Labrador West Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our virtual Q&A with the election candidates. Huge thank you to the candidates Jordan Brown, NDP, Nick McGrath, PC, and Wayne Button, Liberal, for taking the time out of their busy schedule to join us here today. Also, thank you to our community partners, CRRS and Labrador Motors, to help make this possible. The candidates were just presented with 10 questions that were selected from the questions that the residents submitted. Unfortunately, due to the time, they all couldn't be asked, so the Chamber selected the ones that were asked the most. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. They will take turns going first, and each will have a chance to give a closing statement up to 5 minutes. I will start with the first question now. Nick, what are your plans for the lack of low-income housing in the area? There are 18 empty Newfoundland housing units just sitting there waiting for maintenance, while we have homeless individuals in the area. How do you plan on addressing and improving this issue?
I'm very aware of the issue. The first thing that our government will do is address the 18 units that are vacant now. Normally, Newfoundland Labrador Housing would have 3 employees in maintenance. They're down to 1 for the last year and a half. If that is addressed, that could take care of the maintenance of the 18 units, which would bring 18 homeless families into residences. Another type of homelessness that we have here in Labrador West that a lot of people don't realize is as big as it is couch surfing. So we need to find some type of transition housing that can accommodate the people that are moving from couch to couch while they're looking for a place to live. Many of these people are working and with a good employment, but they just cannot find a place to live. So that is something else that needs to be addressed. In 2013, I helped build the building at the end of Cashin and Tamarack Extension, and our government at that time put a $2.3 million investment into that to have 11 units there. What I had hoped for when that was built was to have 1 unit that would be for male housing, for the transition housing. So that's something else that we would look at and hopefully address the homelessness there.
Jordan?
Thank you, Kelly. Absolutely. Those 18 units, they've been vacant for 2 years now. I've been very aware of that and been working with the Newfoundland Labrador Housing and the Labrador West Housing and Homeless Coalition. Significantly, I've approached NL Housing multiple times. They were giving a significant amount of money from the federal government for maintenance and stuff on houses, but it was very slow to get off the ground. We were told multiple times that the work would be tendered out to get it expressly done. The sad part about it is there's 18 empty units and there's 21 families on a wait list here in Labrador West for affordable housing. So clearly affordable housing needs to be moved up in the priority list of things to be done. We don't have enough affordable housing in this region, and as we all know, as there's boom and bust cycles, the price of housing skyrockets. Units that were once affordable instantly become unaffordable. Even happened to me in my own situation. I was living in an apartment when I came back from trade school. Rent was affordable, and that within overnight, as the contracts get announced and things like that in the mining industry, significantly the rent was up to a point that I couldn't even afford. So these are things that have to be addressed as an overall project of, make sure there's enough affordable units in the area, both private and public housing, to make sure that that the rent is affordable for people who can afford it. Make sure that there's initiatives in place to make it available that people can afford to live in this region, because we go through these cycles. Another thing too is that we have to have some transition housing. This community is one of the largest communities without a no barrier shelter. So there is so if someone is homeless and don't have anywhere to spend the night, there is no shelter in this community with that people be able to avail of, and it's very unfortunate that we've gone this long without it. So that's something that has to be immediately addressed as well, to make sure we have no barrier shelters so no one spends a night outside.
Perfect, thank you. Wayne?
Yes, I looked into this pretty extensively, trying to make myself aware of the issue. And with the 18 units, what I'm told is that 10 of them need to be fixed up. And I have to agree with Nick. We only have about one maintenance person now, and I'd like to see that process rush a lot faster, having 2 or 3 maintenance people, because speed is very important in this aspect. Because, as Jordan alluded to, we're a boom and bust region, and we need to get this done quicker rather than later, because ore is good right now, and that's awesome for us. But at the same time, we don't want to find ourselves in the same situation that we had before, and we want to learn from that situation. We want to get these housing units done as much as possible. 8 of the units, what I'm told, they're too large. In the 90s, what we had was bigger families, so these units could be larger, but 8 of them, we are experimenting with the idea of possibly breaking them down into smaller units so that it can be more people or more families attained into them. And there's other options as well, such as looking into getting new units. As Jordan alluded to, there's not enough, and selling ones that we have and getting newer ones. But it's not so much about getting this fixed, it's the speed is what concerns me. We need to get it done. They're already having one maintenance person. We need more maintenance people on the ground doing that, getting it fixed, so that we don't find ourselves into the same situation we had during the boom.
Perfect, thank you. For question 2, and Jordan will go first. What is your party planning on doing about education cuts and classrooms being oversized as they are?
Absolutely. I even started off my campaign going along with class size matters. It's important to me. I have a school-age child right now going through the system, and I used to tell her all the great things we used to do in school when I was younger. Most of that's gone now. There's no band anymore. There's no extracurricular activities anymore because of the cuts to the education system, but also with larger class sizes and less teaching units. One of the biggest mistakes was the amalgamation of all the school boards. When Labrador School Board got molded into the province-wide school board, we've created this huge unwieldy system that is dictated from the island. So we've seen a lot of the allocations change, teaching units change. It all has to be reviewed. It's not working. It's clearly not working. I've talked to students at Menahek, I have talked to teachers at Menahek and JRS, and they obviously keep telling me that there's just no time, the allocations are way off, resource teachers are way off, everything is just not working, and the outcomes are falling and falling and falling. So we need to review the teacher allocation, the resource teacher allocation, and the student help allocations, because it's just not working, and we need these immediately addressed. And we have to be able to bring back stuff like extracurricular, band, art, music. These things are really important for the development of children too, and they're slowly eroding away in the system, and it has to be addressed immediately. There's no time. The leadership needs to be taken now, and action needs to be taken now, because we can't wait any longer, because it's our kids' future, and that's what's most important.
Perfect, thank you. Wayne?
Yeah, I think we can tackle this problem in about 2 or 3 different ways, at least at the local level. What a lot of people don't know is that the teachers' union here is actually their own separate union from the province, and that does have some advantages. Speaking with them, the Premier has committed to allocation models and looking at it and reviewing it. What would be great to see would be this board and this union up here in Labrador be used as a pilot project. So we could actually use the union up here, and we can use the teachers as a pilot project to see how allocation models will work, and then if it's good, we can take that and trickle it down to the rest of the province. So I think that's the first thing that needs to happen, and the Premier has stated that he is on board with allocation models and looking at them for the entire province, not just this region. The other thing we need to do is we need to get another board representative. A lot of people don't know that our representative has left, and we don't have a representative from the Lab West area right now on the Labrador School Board, and we need to get that done. And if I'm voted in, that's something I want to get done right away. We need a strong voice besides just our MHA for sitting at the board table to see what intricate things are happening at the operational level. And we're committed to investing in education. It's an investment. It's not just something on a budget line. It's something that we definitely have to look into, and look at IRTs as well, as Jordan alluded to helping with class size, because I'm not sure everybody's aware, but we have way bigger class sizes here than the average on the island. And that's something that we definitely have to look into, because our children are going to fall behind if we don't.
Perfect, thank you. Nick?
Okay, so the question is basically asks, what is your party going to do about education cuts? First and foremost, our party will not have cuts in the education system. We realize the importance of education for our children, and so therefore there would be no cuts. The allocation system as it is today is not working. When talking to the teachers, talking to the students, they find it very cumbersome with the way the system is now. So the allocation system at all levels has to be revamped and looked at. I agree with Wayne that the union here, the teachers union here in Labrador, certainly could be a good example to all of Newfoundland and Labrador. The schools in Labrador have the teaching curriculum has always been used as an example of what fine teaching is all about. So I compliment our educators here in Labrador, and they certainly can be used as an example. The other thing that we need to look at is the resource tools that are in the education system. A lot of the resource tools have been removed. Behavior management is a major issue right now in the classrooms, and unfortunately the educators are taking a lot of their time working on behavior management. So perhaps we need to look at putting behavior management specialists in the schools themselves, and I think that could alleviate a lot of the problems. But when it comes to cuts, our party is not looking at cuts. We feel that we need to grow what we have and not cut it.
Perfect, thank you. Question 3, and Wayne, you will go first. What is your party going to do towards any leniency towards travel taxes in the 2021 tax year due to COVID travel restrictions?
Yeah, so first off, I actually really want to thank the person that put this question forward, because I'm going to be frank, knocking on like thousands of doors, I haven't got this question yet. So I'm really glad that they actually brought it to my attention. It's definitely something after we're done here today I'm going to talk to the Premier about, because it's something that no one's alluded to me yet at the door, so I want to thank them for that. Listen, we know that when COVID is done, the travel industry, the province as a whole and the region here, Cairns Quest is a great example. We just seen them have to reschedule. Travel is extremely important to Lab West and the province as a whole, and we need to do anything possible once COVID is done to re-stimulate that economy and re-stimulate tourism. So it's definitely something that I think the Premier would probably be on board for. I'm not going to speak for him, but it's definitely something I'm going to bring to his attention to see what we can do about those leniencies on travel taxes. So I want to thank the person for putting that question forward.
Perfect, thank you. Nick?
We all know that tourism is a huge asset to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are famous for the hospitality. So the travel taxes affects that tourism industry. Right now, it's over $1 billion industry in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And Mr. Crosby is on record as saying that he will use tax incentives to rebuild the tourism industry within the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. So that would mean that there would be tax incentives put forward to try and rebuild and entice the travel to increase again. The difference with, if you can bring down the travel taxes and increase travel, you're actually bringing new revenues to the province. And with my background in tourism, having new revenues come into the fiscal financial stream is much better than just moving around money that's already within the province. So you're bringing new dollars, new revenues into the province. So by putting tax incentives in place, I think you can actually increase the revenues for the province.
Perfect, thank you. Jordan?
I take this question a bit differently. I believe this question is about the money that many employers give to their employees every year for tax, and that's usually taxed if they don't use it, part of their northern allowances and stuff. I have gotten this, as an MHA, I've gotten letters about this from people in this town who have received their travel allowances and stuff like that, and now because they can't travel, they will be taxed on it come 2021 because they couldn't go anywhere here because of the current restrictions on travel. I have forwarded all of that information off to my federal colleagues as well to bring this to attention, because it doesn't affect just Labrador West, it affects all northern areas in Canada who get this travel money, and it's, like I said, if you don't use it, you get taxed on it. So myself and Allison actually sat down with 5795 and we had a conversation about this as well, about what possibilities can be addressed when it comes to being taxed on this money that individuals use, and that. So we are working on it. We're very aware of it, and we feel like there should be some leniency given towards people who were unable to travel in this past year due to COVID, and this money could have been used more effectively towards other things to help them get through COVID.
Thank you. And question 4, and Nick, you will go first. What is your party going to do about family doctors staying in the area?
The recruitment and retention of medical professionals, not just doctors, has always been a huge problem here in Labrador West, in all of Labrador actually. I remember about 20 years ago we put together an incentive package to try and entice the recruitment of new medical physicians here in the Labrador West area, and we did have some success with it. One of the biggest mistakes we made as a community group with the enticement package was we didn't have them signed to stay for a particular amount of time. So I think between municipal, provincial and federal governments, all 3 levels of government, as well as the community itself, we need to form another committee. As much as I'm not fussy about having committees, this is one of the places where you do need a committee. You do need the business community on side with you and the infrastructure within all the organizations within the community to put together a package again. And what we need to do is try and entice new doctors that are coming out of medical school, younger doctors, so that they will come here, get them to sign on for a 5-year period, and then hopefully they'll start their families here. And I think of Dr. Costello when he first came here. I remember when he first came here to start a practice and doing his internship. And he was a young man, and he started his family here, stayed, raised his family, and today is one of the best family doctors in Newfoundland and Labrador. And that's what we need to do, is have that package put together again so that we can recruit new doctors, but then the retention is what's most important. And I think if you can get them to stay for 5 years, then they have the roots there and they become content to make it their home.
Perfect, thank you. Jordan?
Absolutely. This is probably the number 2 thing people mention to me when I'm going door to door is about doctors. And right now, as medical professionals are trained right now, they're trained in a team-based setting now. So it's a little bit different than it was about 10, 15 years ago. So they're more used to doing a team-based training. So we have to rethink our model of how we deliver healthcare using healthcare professionals. So that's the start, is making sure that what they're trained in medical school reflects what their profession and what they're going to do in a community. So when I wrote to the Department of Health and the minister at the time to discuss, why don't the Department of Health take on a part of the recruiting process? As a larger entity, it has a lot more reach, a lot more pool. So we need, the recruitment needs to start in the Department of Health, but also it needs to also have a chat about how do we deliver community-based medicine, so in the team-based model. So we have your family doctor, yes, but also we should be also looking at our nursing community as well. It works on the coast of Labrador. All communities on the coast of Labrador don't have doctors. There's a traveling doctor, but they use nurse practitioners to the full scope of their training. And I think that we can do a blended model here in Labrador West where you do have your family doctor, but you also have your nurse practitioner, you have your LPN, you have other healthcare professionals in a team-based setting. I think that would take a lot of the stress and load off doctors, because one part of it is getting adapted to the community. The other part is your work-life balance. And if you don't have a healthy work-life balance, you burn out and you say shag it and you leave the area. So this is why we really need to have a look at how we approach medicine, how we approach the system, and look at more team-based thing. And also another great tool is is Memorial University itself. They had a rural medicine division for some time. I think that role can be expanded into doing more research and development on how health is delivered into rural and remote communities, and a good example is Labrador.
Perfect, thank you. Wayne?
Okay, Kelly, I'm going to talk really fast because I want to get as much in as I can in 2 to 3 minutes, because I could probably talk about this for an hour. So first off, some of the things are already happening that are going to help with the recruiting and retention. The CSAT program, which is a program where foreign doctors come in, they train for a year, and then they go, and after they get their boards, they can go anywhere in Canada. That program is now eliminated. It's been eliminated by the Newfoundland Labrador College of Physicians and Surgeons. So already what's happening with Labrador Grenfell Health is we are pushed now to go ahead and sign contracts with doctors for a longer time. The most recent doctor signing for up to 3 years, and a Memorial graduate and from Newfoundland. So that program being cut is actually kind of a good thing, believe it or not. The second thing we need to do is we need to make this a teaching hospital. Goose Bay has over 15 different medical doctors. We have about 8 to 9 vacancies. Sorry, not vacancies, but spots. And the reason why they get more is because they take part in what's called the NFAM program. We need that program instituted here. That would solve all of our issues long-term, not short-term, but long-term. It's a program where Memorial graduates come and learn in Happy Valley Goose Bay, and then they're more inclined to come back. So we need that program here, first of all. And I'm going to do anything I can, if elected in, to get that program implemented here. So that's 2 things I want to state. The third thing is, Jordan's not wrong. The lifestyle changes are different now for doctors, so we need to give them more options. We need to give them what's called capitation fee for service, where they can actually get a base salary, but they can also work, I guess you would say, overtime per se, if they want, and they can see more patients as opposed to having them burn out. And I really believe that that's going to happen, and we can make those changes because the Premier knows those lifestyle changes more than anybody, because he's a doctor. So I really stand behind that, and I think the Liberal Party is going to get that done. And I apologize for talking so fast because I wanted to get it done in 2 or 3 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, Jordan, you go. What is the party going to do about MTAP, the Medical Travel Assistance Program? This is a hot topic.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kelly. The program's flawed right from the beginning. It's a flawed program. It actually places healthcare costs and burdens directly onto patients. The program is, for most part, is a reimbursement program. So all your travel costs and everything has to be incurred by the patient right up front. Absolutely, that's just terrible. Travel, especially at a Labrador, is extremely expensive. Say if you have to travel for medical or anything like that during peak travel seasons in the summer, even more expensive again. So this program is absolutely flawed. It has to be torn down and built up again. But one thing I want to do right off the top, before we get into that part of it, is take the reimbursement part of airline tickets and move it to the front as an upfront incentive, because there's no change in the money. It's just you're taking what was going to be given to you anyway and move it to the beginning. So your airline ticket up front, here you go, get to your appointment, because that's one of the largest costs incurred for anyone doing medical travel. We need to take the burden off the patient, and that is what we do, because it adds stress to their lives. If they're very sick and have to make multiple trips, just the cost of all this travel and all the costs on your family and everything like that, you're adding on to mental strain, you're adding mental, issues onto people, you're adding money worries onto people. This program is discriminatory. It discriminates against people who have to travel frequently for a living. And that's what is happening now. Labradorians are being discriminated against just to seek medical travel. And this program is just, it's horrendous. It has to go. The whole program has to go and be rebuilt to a more friendly-based thing that did not incur any cost onto a patient whatsoever.
Perfect, thank you. Wayne?
Yeah, the program is completely Old Testament. What I did when the Premier came in was I didn't want to necessarily do a photo op or anything like that. One of my main priorities is I actually sat him down with 2 families in the area that are struggling with this, children with cancer and so forth, going out several times a year, and I wanted him to hear their story. And he agrees. This program is archaic. It is so Old Testament, it's ridiculous. The fact that things are done by paper and not done digitally, and if you're in Blanc-Sablon, which is literally about 10 to 15 minutes from the Labrador border, and you go to the airport, you pay nothing. What happens is all the money is exchanged from the health authority to Provincial Airlines. So doing that, I definitely think the Premier is on board for doing it. We definitely can make it more efficient, and it's not only going to be more efficient and better for people using it, it's going to save money. Why we have to hire multiple people to go through paperwork and you wait weeks on end to get your money back is is chaos. You know, so if you go over and it's $1,300 for your first ticket and you get $1,000 back, you should be paying $300. That's it. You know, you shouldn't be paying $1,300 and then waiting weeks on end to get your money back. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make that program more efficient. Absolutely. The second thing that I would like to see, and I discussed this with the Premier, is a second tier system for people in extreme circumstances. People that go out more than 4 times a year, a child or a partner with cancer, and I'd like to see them get way more than $1,000 or 50% back. I'd like to see them allocated a lot higher, and that's definitely something he's on board with talking to me about, and we're definitely going to make that more efficient. So I'll say that.
Thanks, Wayne. Nick?
So the medical travel assistance program that is in place now is definitely outdated. It's cumbersome, it's not user-friendly, and there's just too much red tape there. Our party has committed to a 100% reimbursement of medical travel assistance for all residents of the province, not just Labrador. One of the other things that I've discussed with Mr. Crosby and suggested is that in Labrador, there was a time when you could go to the airport and there were seats allocated on every flight. I would like to see 2 seats allocated on every flight that comes into Labrador and out of Labrador available for medical travel. In the long run, that would actually save money for the province, because the province would spend a little more upfront. If you were to go to Provincial Airlines, for example, and tell them that you were going to buy 2 tickets on every flight that comes in and out of Labrador, and you're going to do that, it would work out right now with the flights that are here, it would work out to about 80 seats a week. 52 weeks of the year, and you put a 4-year contract in place. I would venture to say that if a contract like that were signed, that you will get the tickets for a very, very low price. And in the long run, the province would actually save money. The patient should not have to pay up front. It's great to say they're going to get the 100% reimbursement, and I like that our party is doing that. But I think it should be in the case that when a medical patient goes to the airport to get services that are not available in the area, they should be able to go over, board the flight, and not have to worry about paying anything.
Thank you. Excuse me. The next question was actually submitted by a group of businesses here in Labrador West. It's a bit of a long question.
You can do the whole thing if you want, instead of doing steps.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so I'll go ahead now and read the whole group of it, and there's 3-parted questions. You guys will have up to 3 minutes to answer this one. Based on numbers provided by Labrador and Molson Coors, St. John's breweries, and beer vendors in Lab West, it is estimated residents of Labrador West are purchasing approximately 100,000 dozen beer each year in Fremont, Quebec. This is because of the much lower prices in Fremont due to their government's lower taxes, fees, and non-regulated prices on beer. Furthermore, due to the lower taxes and fees in Quebec, Labrador residents are purchasing large quantities of spirits and wine in Fremont as well. 100,000 dozen beer is 25 full tractor-trailer loads of lost beer sales a year. Those lost sales have resulted into a considerable loss of jobs and revenues to the economy of Newfoundland and Labrador, including St. John's breweries, trucking companies, and their related service industries. And the 32 licensed beer vendors in Labrador West, revenues are also lost by many businesses as a result of related impulse purchase loss and other spin-off sales loss, while Lab West residents, drawn by much lower prices on beer, spirits, and wine, flock to the shopping center in Fremont. This also applies to jobs and revenues lost by our government's own local store, liquor store, and express agency store. The 3 questions are you aware of these lost revenues and jobs? Number 2, are you aware that government already has systems and procedures in place that have proven to protect and increase government revenues, while at the same time protecting and increasing jobs and revenues in Labrador West on the sale of tobacco products and related impulse purchase items? Number 3, would you make it a priority, and how would you envision our government implementing measures to stop this ongoing significant loss of jobs, revenues, and tax-based shrinkage from our economy of Labrador West and from the province of Newfoundland and Labrador to the province of Quebec? Wayne?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off by saying, yes, I am aware of this issue. When the campaign first started, I wanted to meet with multiple business owners and find out, what's happening, maybe some things that I'm not aware of. And this was something that they did bring to my attention. So I'm totally aware that's happening, and I've already made it a priority because I've already had discussions with the Premier about it. There's no reason why those beer and that alcohol cannot have a rebate, the same thing as the tobacco rebate that they already get. What happened in prior years was it was very hard for the business owners to show that they are losing revenue specifically for Quebec. However, what happened during COVID is that border was shut down, and those businesses actually have lines on their revenue to show that their revenue went up substantially when the border was closed due to COVID for several months on end. And that trickles down, as the person alluded to in the question, all the ways down to people driving trucks with the beer delivered from St. John's and so forth. I know one retailer who already told me they hired 2 truck drivers instead of 1 during the COVID. They actually had to hire more people during COVID because specifically of beer. I know another corner store owner that told me he had to hire someone else to come in on Tuesday nights specifically because of beer. And this all happened with the COVID, and now they actually have a good lobbying power revenue stream to show that we can compete with Quebec, where they didn't have before. Now, the PC government did remove the tobacco rebate. Thank God the Liberal Party brought it back. So I don't see any reason why we can't go ahead and get alcohol or beer rebate to compete with Quebec. It's only fair. They want a fair playing ground with Quebec, and we can definitely get that done. It's already a priority to me.
Perfect, thank you. Nick, do you need me to read the question? You're good? Okay.
So this is a topic that I'm very aware of. When I was the MHA from 2011 to 2015, during the budget of 2013, the tobacco tax was taken, the rebate was taken away. And I fought aggressively then to have it brought back, and actually went to Fairmont and bought a 60-pack of beer, and I'm not a beer drinker, but I bought a 60-pack of beer and a carton of cigarettes, I'm not a smoker, to show the finance minister the difference. And then I bought the same product in Labrador West. He could not believe the differences. This is an issue that I'm already working on since April. I'm working with one of the local retailers here in the community who approached me, and she actually has all of her revenue statements from 2019, her revenue statements from 2020, and now a month-to-month breakdown of her revenues in beer sales during the COVID. The difference is unbelievable. Her sales were up 6 times when the border was closed going to Fairmont. This is a very easy fix. The work is already done. This is a copy and paste. You can take the exact same method for the tobacco tax rebate and put it into beer and wine. Or you can just start with the beer if you want to do it on a pilot project. The difference it would make in revenue staying within Labrador West is huge. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars over a fiscal year period. And as is alluded to in the question, it will create jobs. And the jobs that are going to be created by putting this tax incentive in place are level entry jobs. And those are the jobs that people are looking for. Those are the jobs that actually stimulate the economy, because the people that are coming in on entry level, they spend the money.
Perfect, thank you. Jordan, you need me to reread the question, or are you good?
No, absolutely not. I'm good. I had in August, when Allison came up here for a visit, we sat down with retailers and we had a very in-depth discussion about this exact situation. Allison actually worked in the Department of Finance at one time, was very aware of how this would work and how this thing, especially with the tobacco rebate and stuff like that. So we then after met with the then Minister Osborne and had a discussion about this and that. So after, unfortunately, there was a cabinet shuffle afterwards, and then we met with the current finance minister, along with the heads and bureaucrats with the Newfoundland Labrador Liquor Corporation, and we had to talk about this and how we can mimic the tobacco rebate over to the liquor side of things. And we actually had a very frank discussion that there is something wrong, and we told them that This is a very easy solution. Take what you have with the tobacco rebate, mimic it over onto the liquor side of things, and so that way we're not in this situation where, that we're losing revenue, massive amounts of revenue, just 5 kilometers away. And this is a tactic that you see with Quebec. They do the same thing on the border with New Brunswick, Ontario. You see it down in Blanc-Sablon. There is the same thing. They draw customers from other provinces into their province to take away sales and create revenue for their own Crown Corporation. So obviously we have to combat this. This has to end, and we have to come up with a solution that keeps these sales and stuff local. We lose a significant amount of jobs. This is a region that has the highest income per capita in the province. So obviously these are sales that are significant, even more so than you would find in other parts of this province. So having those significant sales go to another province has to end.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. All parties have been making many promises, and we all know the province is bordering on bankruptcy. So where are you getting the money to fulfill these promises? Nick?
So I would use one word to sum up what needs to be done here, and it's cooperation. In my former role as a Minister of the Crown, I remember in 2013 when we were working on an austerity budget, and let it be on the record that I am 100% against austerity budgets. They do not work. But every department was given a task to find a 12% reduction within your department. Some departments that was easy. Departments such as health, it's very difficult to find a 12% reduction. Matter of fact, they're looking for a 12% increase. But when I say the word cooperation, it's very, very important that from the top down, all government employees, all governments, all parties have to cooperate together to make a leaner government. You have to work with what you have. As it says in the question, we're on the brink of bankruptcy. So you can't spend and spend and spend and worry about where you're going to get that revenue from later. You have to take what you have, make it leaner, and make it work.
Okay, perfect. Jordan?
It's about choices. It's about what kind of choices you make for the people of the province. It's about the choices you make for your district. Right now, we can see that one company was given $54 million and told, don't cut jobs. The first thing they did was they cut jobs and took the money. So it's about what kind of choices you make as a government. And the choices that should be made is choices towards people and individuals. They're the ones who are going to rise us out of this. It's not, large corporations, multinational corporations, offshore corporations. They're not going to rise us out of this problem. It's the people who actually live in this province. They're the ones who are going to help rise us up. And that's the choices we need to make. We need to make choices that are for people and make people have the tools, the mechanisms, and the resources to actually build an economy in this province. Giving people the ability to actually create something is what actually really drives an economy. Creation, thought, and innovation. That's what we really got to do. It's not about, how much money do you give to a multinational corporation. It's about what kind of resources and tools and things you have. Work within the means we have now, because there is ability right now in this province to make the proper choices without massive programs or massive giveaways. We can do it with what we got now. We can take that and tool it towards individuals, people, and give them the tools. Small business, innovation from small business alone generates massive amounts of opportunity and economic growth. So eliminating small business tax alone will give people and businesses the ability to maneuver their own money that actually would employ more people employed, more taxes towards government. So obviously, we give the choices to people because they're the ones who are actually footing the bill. Every individual's taxes, that's what foots the bill for this province.
Perfect, thank you. Wayne?
Yeah, I totally agree with Nick. It's something that no matter who gets in, we all got to work together. This is a responsibility for everybody in the province. I think we fix it in a couple ways. I'm not going to sit here and lie. We definitely probably need some help from Ottawa, and whether that comes in the form of rate mitigation or Muskrat Falls. We've already gotten help from Ottawa, over $1 billion with a B in the last 4 months with our premier. Give them 4 years, you're going to get a lot more than $1 billion. So we're going to get help from Ottawa, absolutely. The second thing is, like Nick talked about, efficiencies. Efficiencies, I mean, I want you to imagine every single person in Labrador who takes a trip to see a surgeon to find out there's no surgery and there's no MRI. You just take that alone in this region and you make it telehealth, where someone zooms in and they can have that interaction with the surgeon. That right there will save millions. I've talked to the teachers the other night, with the teachers union. They talked about buying $10,000 worth of chairs and having to pay $24,000 for it, because of the catalog method that was done in the PO system with the education system. That's just two examples I can talk about on end about efficiencies. So that's definitely something we can do, help from Ottawa and efficiencies. If you compare us to other Atlantic provinces, most Atlantic provinces right now pay 8-9% under deficit, and we're paying up to 15%. So we're already paying more in the debt services than any other Atlantic province. So I agree with Nick, I don't think it's going to happen with one big giant scary budget. I think that looks really effective to the media, and it looks like, oh, look at us, we're doing something. And then within a year we find out we're in the same situation. So I think it happens over a long-term plan and chipping away at it with those three different things.
Perfect, thank you. Question 8. Where do you feel responsibility lies for the protection of taxpayer funds, adherence to the Public Tendering Act, and fairness to suppliers in the bidding process? This is as it applies to government services as public utilities, education, health and welfare, legal, motor vehicle, etc. Jordan?
Well, exactly. Like, we have to protect the money that we receive. The money that's in the coffers of the province is the money of the province. It's money from people. It's from collecting that. So when you're doing tendering and you're doing things like that, you have to make sure that, one, you're keeping it as local as possible so that the money continues to go back into our own economy. Two, you got to make sure that, that all your contracts are signed and they're double checked and triple checked to make sure that it's in the best interest of the province. And three is make sure that the leadership and that is taken when those contracts are not fulfilled or are something egregious or something happens. You just take example of this past summer on the Trans-Labrador Highway. The contractor picked up their equipment and went somewhere else, and leaving this contract significantly not done, not completed, but there was no punitive action. There was nothing taken. That is actually, an unusable. It was a horrible example of making sure that the protections are there from the public's money. So you got to make sure that it's always in the best interest, but you also have to protect it to make sure that you're not going to cost, because there's going to be cost overruns and there's going to be things like this. Muskrat Falls is another great example. The public's money was egregiously used and there was no consequence. So this is one part of it. Another thing is keeping it local. Make sure that there's stipulations that you buy local, you hire local, and you keep the money circulating within the provincial economy. So that's where we things when you want to protect the taxpayer's money and protect the taxpayer in these tendering things. Sole source contracting, another thing like that it costs us more money. There should never be sole sourcing. It needs to go out to the public so that way we know that we're getting the best value, but also we got to make sure that we're protecting the taxpayer's money, because at the end of the day, when we don't follow these things, it costs us more in the end of the day.
Perfect, thank you. Wayne?
Yeah, we're to ask who do you think should be responsible. I think it's, I'll be honest, the party in power. I think we all need to be accountable with the Tendering and the Procurement Act. In reference to what Jordan spoke about in terms of the highway, what was stated to me was that essentially if we brought the contractors to court, they probably would have won because of COVID, and that would have actually wasted more of taxpayers' dollars just to get into a bitter argument with a contract company over something that should have been done. The Procurement Act, in my opinion, should be reviewed every 2 years from an independent, committee, the same way that the minimum wage is reviewed every 2 years. That way you would take the politics out of it, and you can also nitpick every single 2 years about things that need to be done, and people need to be held accountable. I totally agree with that with Jordan, where companies should be local and they should be held accountable, but that's essentially, to answer your question shortly, what I'd like to see. I'd like it reviewed every 2 years, because the Procurement Act just came into effect a couple years ago. I'd like to see it reviewed every 2 years to make sure it's done.
Perfect, thank you. Nick?
So the Public Tendering Act itself is fairly new. It was reviewed back in 2012, 2013 and revamped. But I agree with Wayne that the Public Tendering Act should be, at a minimum of every 3 years, it should be reviewed. It needs to be reviewed now. Every tender that's written by the provincial government is different. Every tender is written to a specific job. I feel that we need to tighten up the language within the tenders. And I will use the project that Jordan alluded to on the Trans-Labrador Highway. So the company that had that first tender was awarded the tender for 80 kilometers. That was awarded in 2019. There was 0 kilometers finished in 2019, 2020. In 2020, another 80 kilometer tender was awarded for another 80 kilometers. So that's 160 kilometers. The same company was awarded the second tender. That should never be. To me, that's mismanagement by the government. If a company has been awarded a tender that they did absolutely 0 work on, and then are given a second tender for another 80 kilometers, you're talking about $300 million in work there. That should never be. Sorry, not 300 million, 60 million in work for that. So the government has the right to call back. Those tenders have language in them that the government can pull back the tender. And that's where government is falling down. Government needs to be stricter when their tenders go out. If you award a tender, the language that's in the tender, go by the language. And if the companies don't adhere to the language and get the job done, get another company to do it and put the penalties in place. All of these tenders have the rights for penalties, and government is not doing that. So that's where we need to tighten things up.
Perfect, thank you. Question number 9. What is the plan to make this province more attractive to the younger generations? We lose too many people to our neighboring provinces. Wayne?
Yeah, so we have a really big population and out-migration problem, and I'm not sure everybody is fully aware of it. I mean, we do not actually make enough children to cover the cost of people that are leaving and so forth. I think we can do this in a couple ways. One way my party has already done, and that's when Premier Furey came on with $25 a day childcare. And that's just the beginning. You know, 25-day childcare for accessible and affordable childcare all over the province is definitely going to be something that attracts young families. The studies have shown with universal childcare in Quebec, it's done a massive amount of population growth for that province. So I can see us definitely increasing that potential. The second thing I really think happens with the education piece. Young people, you know, come here to get educated, and they're more likely to stay if they get educated here. They might meet someone, fall in love with the area, and I really do think Memorial's holding its own because it's been a long time since they increased tuition. So we're very competitive with other Atlantic provinces and parts of the country with Memorial, and I think that's one thing that we're doing correct. You know, the third thing is immigration, which our party has already come out with last week in a policy to triple this. So we're going to get more people into our areas because of that. And the fourth thing, which all the parties, I'm glad to see, have talked about, and I won't go into my own personal experiences, but is to have IVF, you know, more promoted in this area. You know, there's 4 provinces right now in the country who give some subsidy to help with IVU or IVF, and I think we're going to see something like that on the forefront, whether it's a fertility clinic or whether it's rebates, however it's done. I think those 4 things are definitely going to help increase the younger population specifically to the province.
Perfect, thank you. Nick?
Some very good points that Wayne made there, and I agree with all of them. A couple of other points that I would like to make. When it comes to post-secondary education, there's a couple of levels there where I think we as a province can certainly improve. When it comes to professional like medicine or law, I think there should be a more open forum for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to get accepted into the school. I know of a young lady that grew up here in Labrador West. She wanted to go to medical school. In the process of waiting to get accepted into the medical faculty in Newfoundland and Labrador, she did her BN, she did her master's in nursing, and finally got accepted. At one point, it was suggested to her by a dean in the university that you should dye your blonde hair and wear contacts to get rid of your blue eyes. Because blonde hair and blue eyes, and that is discrimination. Today she is a specialist, a medical doctor and a specialist, and a fine one at that. If we were to open up more seats to local Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and try to keep their tuition fees even lower than they are, although Newfoundland and Labrador is doing well, I think that would attract young people, professionals to stay here. The second piece on post-secondary education is your blue-collar workers. Labrador West is a blue-collar community. It's a mining industry. That's mining is our main industry, and all the other spin-offs from it. We have a community college up here on the hill, as I refer to it. I remember standing in a pickup truck to fight for that college. Every course that's taught in our college here should have something to do with the industry here in Labrador West. If we were doing that, it's ridiculous that our tradespeople have to leave the area for 6 weeks to go out to do block training. It's unheard of anywhere else. So I would like to see that change, and I think that would increase our population for the youth.
Perfect, thank you. Jordan?
Yes, thank you. It's interesting that this question came up. I did a podcast 2 days ago, an Atlantic Canada podcast about youth and about youth engagement in politics. So I actually had a great discussion about that, and actually a more broader Atlantic Canada scope. But I want to narrow into this region especially. Like Nick said about the college up there, I call it a race car with no wheels. A beautiful college, high tech, ready to go, nothing in it. That is the thing. I actually had a conversation with some people in the department and in the CONUS band itself, and said that course allocation has become political. That we need to end that. A course shouldn't be kept in an area that's not even relevant to the course for political reasons. If the course is relevant to an area, the course should be offered in that area. Block training all block training for any trade that is in this region should be offered up in that college up there, because we should not have to send people all over this province for political reasons when it comes to their education. And that's what happened. Block training, course things has become a political topic, and that needs to end. We have more heavy equipment operators per capita than anywhere else in this province. You can't do heavy equipment mechanic up there, you can't do heavy equipment operator up there. Makes no sense whatsoever. It should be offered in that college. Anything in the mining related industry needs to be offered here. We should be attracting people into our region through the college. There should be a residence up there. There should be a way to attract young people to come and do schooling in this area. That is one key aspect of retention and thing is people move because of education. A lot of people that I went to school with now live in St. John's because they went to school in St. John's, they fell in love with that city, they moved there that way. Well, we can do the opposite here by having a great college with a residence and offer a huge slew of mining-related courses in our community. And that's where we need to go with this. We need to make sure that we're offering the best to our best.
Perfect, thank you. Last question. If elected MHA, what would you do to stop iron ore from leaving Labrador to be processed in Quebec? Kami Project is now owned by Champion, and there are concerns that Labrador ore will be processed at Broom Lake, resulting in no jobs for Labradorians. Nick?
Two comments I'd like to make there. The first one is a third transmission line. We need a third transmission line. Right now, the two transmission lines that are coming into Labrador West from Churchill Falls are full of capacity. We have an industrial park in the Wallish Industrial Park that some buildings can't get power because there's just no power to be transmitted. So a third transmission line is very important. Back in 2013, when Alderon had the Kami project, they invested $75 million to start the cutting of the line. A lot of that has been done. I think the government should be working with the larger industries to make sure that the third transmission line does come in. If Bloom Lake starts to mine the Kami project and they decide that they're going to take the ore from Labrador, cross it over on that conveyor belt into Quebec and process it in Bloom Lake, all of the jobs will go to Quebec. As a province, I think we need to stop that. We cannot let any ore go across that rail line and conveyor belt into Quebec unless the jobs are in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I think it should be the same rule that it's Labradorians first, then Newfoundland and Labradorians. Then if you can't fill the positions, then it can go somewhere else. But we need to protect our own, and we need to protect them with our minerals.
Perfect, thank you, Nick. Jordan?
Absolutely agree with Nick with the third transmission line. I have been lobbying both the federal and provincial natural resource ministers about that project. It should never have been cancelled in the first place, and that was a dark day, because if that project was, the third transmission line project wasn't cancelled, the line would have been built and it would have kept jobs here, because at the time that it was cancelled, it was the same time Walbush Mines closed, so it would have been a project that would have kept jobs here in the town. It was an egregious thing that duty was even to cancel that project in the first place. The second thing is, I did speak with Champion Iron and their CEO about it. I made my intentions known that I will not stand for any raw ore leaving this province, or especially Labrador West, and that all jobs would have to be thing. I also met with the provincial minister of natural resources about it at the same time, to say that if anything happens, we need to renegotiate a benefits agreement with the new owners of that property to make sure that all ore is processed and mined, processed and shipped out of here from Labrador, not from Quebec. And that was my intentions well known. I don't think that we should give away anything. The giveaways have to end. Like the giveaway of Muskrat Falls, the giveaway of everything that we happen here, the giveaways need to end. And we said we should be doing secondary and tertiary processing in this province. We're not, because we gave away so much of our resources to get a quick buck. The giveaways have to end.
Thank you. Wayne?
Yes, so I think we're all in agreement about a third line. I think everybody in Labrador West wants that, so I won't reiterate that. It's in the Mining Act that all these things are contingent on the minister. And I talked to Minister Parsons about this, and he's totally on board with having negotiating agreements with Champion where all that processing happens here in Labrador, in the province, and they're currently doing that right now already with Come By Chance. They're negotiating with their unions and their company to make sure that things are allocated properly for the province. So he's totally on board with that. What the voter has to ask themselves is, who do they want at the table doing that? Because if it is a Liberal majority government, I'll be at that table. Minister Parsons have already stated that. If it's a Liberal majority government, my two counterparts probably will not be invited to that table. So we have to get on board with making sure that they process it here in town, here in Labrador, and Minister Parsons has already committed to that, and we'll negotiate with them and get that done.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So that concludes the Q&A section. Following suit, now you guys will each get a chance to do a closing statement, up to 5 minutes long, and your turn, Jordan.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting us to this QA. It's been great. It's great to have a chance to actually speak to the community like this in this capacity. I just want to say, it's been an absolute pleasure for the last year and 9 months to sit in the House of Assembly on behalf of the people of Labrador West. This community means a lot to me. The people of this community means a lot to me, and to have this opportunity has been absolutely fantastic. I went in there day one putting Labrador first. You can even look at my signs. There's a Labrador flag on all my signs, because it is not only to just show that I'm Labradorian, but it's also to remind me that Labrador comes first. This is my home. This is where I grew up. This is where I'm raising my family. And Labrador always comes first to me, before party, before everything. Labradorians come first. And that's where we want to keep this that way. We need to end the discrimination from government where services are not on par, not equal, because of our location. Because you're a Labradorian, you shouldn't have to bear upfront costs for services. Just because you're a Labradorian, you shouldn't have to, have subpar services or, subpar things. Like I said, like I alluded to earlier, our college alone, a race car without wheels. There's a great facility, nothing offered to us in it. Same with our hospital. Great facility, subpar services because of our location. This needs to end. We need to actually put ourselves first. Labradorians need to start coming first, and we have to. All we're asking at the end of the day, is asking to be treated equally within this province. And right now, we're not being treated equally. This is where we need to put an end to this, and we have to talk about what's important to us as Labradorians, and that is just being treated equally. I've had a great run with this. It's been excellent, and I want to continue to do the work. I want to continue to finish all the great things that I've started, and just finish all the great work that and lobbying that I have done to make sure that we can make this region prosperous, to make sure that we have great jobs, to make sure that people are looked after. And that's the number one thing, is make sure that the people of Labrador are looked after at the end of the day when it comes to local jobs, local hiring, and keeping it local. You know, we've had our COVID battles here as well, you know, but we've done so well. And that's because the people of this region understands that it takes a community to look through all these things. As a community, we stood up for ourselves many times again, and we continue to do it because together it's easier than it is to do it divided. We have a great opportunity here. The iron ore market is really great at this time. It's not going to last forever. We all know how the cycles go, but we have to make sure that there's safety nets in place, that we don't go back to the days of 2014, and we don't go back to those things. We have to make sure that all the safety nets are in place. We have to make sure that everything is done, that when we do see a market slow down, we don't see any speed bumps on our journey. We got to make sure that we have everything in place to protect individuals. We go back to housing and homelessness. Homelessness is a huge problem in this region, and it needs to be tackled, but we don't see it every day, but it's there. And that's why I say we always have to check on our neighbors, check on our friends, to make sure that we have the things in place to help all our neighbors. We talk with seniors. It's an interesting conversation that I had with an individual that I didn't realize that she's technically a senior now. I grew up with her all my life, but you see that person every day. You don't realize that individual is now a senior, and they stuck around. They stayed because they were born and raised here. And that's the thing too. We need to make sure that our seniors are looked after, and currently our seniors are not being looked after. So we need to make sure that they get the equal access to services that every other region of this province gets, but for some reason in Labrador West they don't get. And that's where we have to make sure that we are treated equally, we're treated fairly, and just because we're Labradorians doesn't mean we should be treated differently.
Awesome, thank you, Jordan. Wayne?
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Jordan said and thank the Chamber of Commerce for doing this. They've been great community leaders and allowing us to talk today on this forum. It's been great being here and doing the Q&A. You know, first and foremost, I want the voters to go out February 13 and vote. But before they do, I want them to consider a couple of things. You know, like Jordan, I grew up here, and I love every square inch of this region. I moved back, and I could see the waving changes that occurred. There's only one thing that torments me about this region, and it's the same thing that torments everybody else, and that is we've never gotten our fair due. Never. And that consumes me. That torments me, that keeps me up at night, and it's in every waking thing that I do. And I want you to vote for that guy. I want you to vote for the guy who will knock on over 2,000 doors to get your vote. I want you to vote for the guy who stays up till 2 a.m. reading those boring government reports so you don't have to. The guy who already talks to the CEO of Labrador Grenfell Health weekly about the struggles that we go through. The same person who stood on the picket line with his wife wondering how they were going to get through another month of a strike. So I want you to vote to that guy who's already committed to give everything he can to Labrador West, who deserves all of him, not some of them. And, you know, ask yourself, who do you want leading you out of this pandemic? Who do you want sitting at the table with these corporations as a leader? Is it Alison Coffin? Is it Ches Crosby? Or is it Dr. Andrew Fury? Ask yourself those questions. Who do you want picking up the phone and talking to when your child's sick? Who do you want picking up the phone when you need something for your business? You know, ask yourself those questions. I'm going to end with, you know, no fear mongering, no finger pointing, just two little simple commitments that I know I've always lived and died by, and that is I'll always fight for you and I'll always get back to you. And I want you to think about that when you vote February 13th. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Nick?
Again, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for setting up this forum. I think it was a great forum, the Q&A, and a great way for the general public to hear about all three candidates, where they stand on their platforms. I came here 43 years ago as a young man to go to work. and I've been here involved heavily in the community for the last 43 years. I'm what you call an adopted Labradorian and very proud to be adopted by such a great land. When I came to Labrador West, I wanted to make it my home. And in order to make it my home, I had to get involved. There's not too many organizations or associations that I have not had my finger in the pie at some time. As a former MHA for Labrador West, I know my way around the Confederation building. As a former minister, I know how to get through the red tape. I know how the network works. I know how the system works. And I think it's very important. This election is not about Nick McGrath. This election is not about Jordan Brown. This election is not about Wayne Button. It's about you, the people of Labrador West. And it's very important that you make the decisions. As the other two candidates just alluded to, you have to make a decision on February 13th. You will make a decision who, for the next 4 years, will be your voice on the floor of the legislature in the House of Assembly. You need an articulate, well-spoken person that can bring your issues to the table. And I use the analogy at the doors when I'm out knocking and people are talking to me about some of their issues. There's one pie and there's 40 people trying to get a piece of that pie. How am I going to make sure I get my piece of the pie? I'm going to try to convince the other 39 that the pie is no good for them. And then I walk away with the pie. And that's what you have to have, somebody who's thinking on their feet, someone who is not afraid to speak up, and someone who can articulately say what it is that you, the residents of Labrador West, what your issues are and how you want them addressed. Thank you very much, and on February 13th, I humbly ask for your support.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much for joining us. It was very informative. Hope you all have a great night, and thank you for tuning in.